guess what? It's through doing this wonderful gathering of people once a month or every other month of people coming together that there's such a rich network of stories. And I love having this platform because I never stop learning from people's experiences. So, Robyn, can you tell us more about you?
Thanks, Val. And I can't wait till the book comes out. I'm so excited. Yeah, so hi, everybody. I'm Robyn Houston Bean. I'm the founder of the Sun Will Rise Foundation. We provide peer grief support to people bereaved due to substance use related causes. We have many different groups, virtual and in person, and we talk about so many things that are related to our grief. And something that comes up often is awe and wonder. And it was a perfect match for us to work together on this project because so many people want to share their stories and talk about it. And this is a really beautiful thing to be able to share it with the world instead of our little inner circles. So I thank you for letting this be a thing that we're doing together.
Thank you. Hey, Robyn. A lot of times
Mhm.
we pop in when we talk to each other. Oh, something happened recently. I had a wonder moment. Or so I'm wondering, did you have anything recently you want to tell us?
Yeah, so I actually I tried to orchestrate something. So my son Nick died at the age of 20 in 2015. And it was May of this year that the 10-year anniversary was. And in my newsletter to my group members, I said, in honor of Nick, because this organization wouldn't exist if he hadn't had passed, I'm inviting you all to stop for a minute of awe and wonder. Just look around you and see what you can see throughout the day. And I would love for you, if anything happened, you saw anything that made you pause, to share them with me. And I knew I would get back different little amazing things that people would just go out about, a bunch of grieving people just opening themselves up. It was like this permission to do so. And I did get some really amazing, beautiful people saw rainbows that day and a bird's nest in their flower pot. And someone went into a church and the light was just beautiful and they shared that with me. And in that, I think, you let yourself think more about awe and wonder and these things that are happening. And I was just like getting goosebumps because all these people were now invited by that just one little thing in a newsletter. And I was getting
Uh-huh.
hundreds of these things back. It was giving me chills. And I mean, I was really sad that day. 10-year anniversary is really hard. So it was like their moments to share with me were bringing me like back, like, okay, come on, look at all these things that are out there in the world. There's so much life and so many things to see. And so I was driving and I was just tearing, like thinking like this is just so strange that I'm getting these beautiful things because Nick is dead, right? I'm getting these moments of beautifulness. And then I was driving in a car. Now, the name of the organization is the Sun Will Rise Foundation, and our logo is like a primitive sun because that's what Nicholas drew on his notebook. It said, "Please be happy, the sun will rise." And I'm driving in the car, and I'm thinking about all of this stuff right now. And all of a sudden, the car in front of me had the word rise with a primitive sun on it. It had nothing to do with my son, it was some other company, a random company, but it was dead stopped right beside me, right in front of my eyes. And I had to say, all right, there's my hour moment wonder for the day. I'll
Hmm.
share this back with my community because they shared so many moments with me and kept me going that day. So I really, really, you just open it up and it comes to you. That's how I feel about these things. So.
That is amazing. The timing is always amazing to me. Dave Roberts is here today, and we're going to talk with Dave, do a really deep dive into some awe and wonder stories. And Dave, you're such a wonderful storyteller. Dave happens to be a professor of the psychology and life department at Utica University. He also is the author of a book and a podcaster. And Dave, we're going to definitely talk with you about your experiences, especially since you teach a lot of wonderful courses on grief and loss, and you reach out to people all ages. You hear a lot from young people about loss as well. So I think your perspective is going to be fascinating about healing and grief.
As you mentioned, I'm professor in the psychology child life department at Utica University. I teach death, dying, and bereavement. I've been at Utica University now for over 22 years. I'm no stranger to grief. I've danced with death since I've been 5 years old. Um, it started when my father, left and had my mother raised me as an only child, but the loss that has gotten me to the point where I took a really deep dive into all things awe and wonder and things related to death and dying was the transition, and I call it transition of my daughter Jeannine at the age of 18 over 22 years ago due to a rare form of cancer. And today I was nudged to kind of bring her into the podcast with me. So that's is her picture in the background. One of my favorite
That's
pictures of her.
all good.
So I was nudged to bring her in, and I figured what perfect time to do this than for this podcast about awe and wonder because she's provided me in spirit with many moments of awe and wonder, and through also people that I care about. She's come through them as well too. So that's going to be kind of a couple of things I'm going to talk about tonight. Um, so that's it. And also in a past life, what seems like a past life, I was an addictions counselor and a clinical supervisor. So when Robyn was sharing her story about Nick, the work that I did with addictions and the stigmatization that is unfairly applied on those individuals with addiction or with substance use disorder. Um, it just doesn't speak to the depth of the individuals who are dealing with the behaviors that are associated with it. Um, so I resonated with Robyn obviously on that piece, and with my work with individuals who had challenges with all kinds of drugs. Um, their gifts were numerous. Their integrity and intelligence one was numerous, and basically we focused on dealing with the behavior and not at the expense of the self-esteem of the individual because we recognized their inherent gifts apart from the addiction. And I'm very much science-based. I believe in science, but I also believe that there's room for spirituality and the magic that the universe beholds. And I think there's room for both of those to be integrated. So that's a encapsulated view of my story. And I've had many mentors along the way who have gotten me to this point, and in particular, our Reverend Patty Farino, who facilitated the spiritually transformative experience that allowed me to find peace with my daughter's passing, and also begin to embrace the multidimensional aspects of the universe, especially with signs from our loved ones. And that, as you mentioned earlier, with the book that we wrote, Patty and I co-authored that book about the experience, our conversations, the importance of critical thinking, and how the marriage of psychology and spirituality can help us transcend challenge. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's me in a nutshell of 70 years of life.
Here, here.
One of the things, and I was giving some thought to what I wanted to share for today's episode, but one of the things is that our loved ones don't necessarily have to manifest signs directly to us for us to believe in their presence. If they're
Mhm.
coming to somebody else through any form of energy, once we hear of that story, they have come to us. And I think it's important to understand that because a lot of times individuals will say, will question whether or not an individual had a specific sign. Now, you can't consensually validate my own experience with a sign. That depends on what's going on with me in the moment, what I'm thinking about. Like with the story that Robyn shared earlier about the sun and rises. That's her own unique experience. She was thinking of Nick, that sign manifested. And so you put two and two together. And if I put myself in her shoes, I would say if that were me, I would interpret that as a strong message
Mhm.
from my loved one. So when they come to somebody else, and we hear that story and we share that to another person, that may alleviate some of the skepticism they have about the subjectivity that they see with our experience. And again, you can't consensually validate a subjective experience. You can only witness it and understand what it means to the individual. So I also have a picture that I will show you, and if we could, well, I'll do the screen share in a second, if that's okay with everybody. This is a picture, and you in the past episode, if individuals go back to the first episode, you know what my affinity for crows and their specific meanings for me and their how they've inspired me in my own journey. Um, I two very dear friends of mine were in Alaska. They're visiting their daughter out in Alaska, and they were traveling on the Denali Highway. And the Denali Highway is like 135 miles of rough road. And they sent me a picture, and I almost like if there was a mic, I would have dropped it. I'm going to show you this picture. I'm going to keep in mind that Jeannine transitioned on March 1st, 2003. So when you see this picture, and they interpreted this as a sign from my daughter, they were very aware um, of her journey with cancer, aware of her date of transition. So here's the picture that I am going to show. And we'll see if we can get this. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
This is this is a raven that landed on mile marker 31 of the Denali Highway. And they were they were looking and they just couldn't believe it. And Tammy, who took the picture, told me, she said this raven looked like it was just posing and saying, "Take the picture of me already." So she took the picture, and we went out to dinner at a local restaurant, and she gave me the picture. Her and Kathy gave me the picture, and it was like I was speechless. And for anybody who knows me, I'm never speechless, but I just didn't really have any words to because I was just, it took my breath away. Because what are the odds of having a single raven land exactly on a mile marker 31 of a 135-mile highway in Alaska? So, and that's again for me, I'm going to stop the share. That's for me. Um,
So three is March,
yeah, 3 is March and March 1st.
right?
So that's the picture I wanted to show just to prove that our loved ones don't have to manifest us directly. They can manifest to other individuals to who in turn come to us and then that sign becomes ours. And it also gives further proof of the survival of consciousness or evidence of the survival of consciousness beyond death.
And they were feeling it too, right? They were so like blown away by it that they had to send it to you. So
Yeah.
they got to experience that knowing that would be powerful to you, but was also so powerful to them.
Yeah, both Tammy and Kathy are very intuitive, and the first thing they said was they interpreted that as being a sign from my daughter immediately. Um, because I mean that's something you really couldn't make up at all. And again, what are the odds of a single raven landing exactly on the mile marker that indicates the month and day that my daughter died, transitioned, or passed on, however you conceptualize death? So, and I interpreted that as a very strong message.
Yeah.
So that was one that I had. So, and there are others. I mean, I could share, I could share another picture quickly if I can get it up. And this is one of my granddaughter, Jeannine's daughter. The other part of the story with Jeannine was that Jeannine transitioned 10 months after giving birth to her
Wow.
only child, Brianna. And
Yeah.
this was a Christmas. Brianna's now 23. This had to be when she was about 5 or 6. And I will see if I can do the screen share again. I got it. Okay, so we're gonna. All right, can you see that?
Oh, yes.
Can
Yes.
you
Oh,
can you see that? That is a picture. That's Brianna. She was doing an overnight with us, and we were sharing. We did our Christmas with her. It had to have been probably a weekend in December, maybe the weekend after Christmas. I forget when, but it was so long ago. But we took a picture I don't know, I think I must have taken the picture. And right over her left shoulder, you see an orb. Um, and that is as clear as day. I mean, sometimes orbs can be confused with water spots, but you can tell the difference between a water spot and an orb. You can see with that orb, it's very prominent. It's over her, which would be her right shoulder, I believe. Um, and you can see there's like a lot of markings. There's a lot of distinctive patterns to it.
Hmm.
Um, and it was very prominent. So, my that's my wife Sherry, and the other part of the picture, and we both interpreted that as a very strong sign that Jeannine was spending Christmas with her daughter and with us.
I think sometimes a photograph is a wonderful way to hold on to the significance.
Yeah, when you said that, I find sometimes now when I am experiencing awe and wonder, I have to take a picture because I have to prove to somebody
Mhm.
because there's so many people that doubt these different things can happen. So of course I have a picture of that car from the other day, or when you were just talking about the orbs, we had a family wedding this
Yeah.
weekend, and I've got two children plus Nick who died, and then I have two nephews, and they're all very close. They're like siblings. And I wanted a picture of the four of them. Of course, Nick is not at this wedding. And we've taken bunches of pictures all night long at this wedding this weekend. And the picture that I took of the four of them, Nick's favorite color is purple. All of a sudden, in that picture, there's a purple line
Yeah.
directly right down the middle. And I said to myself, well, that was Nick joining us at the wedding this weekend. And, and I have a picture of it to prove it because will be naysayers that these things, oh, it's in your head or whatever. But to me, that filled me with such like, oh, he was here. He's part of this. Is beautiful. This is wonderful. And it helps me to go on because I know in my heart that this is like a healing process. He's coming along in my life instead of us leaving him behind.
It's personal and it can be enormously motivating. So I'm just putting that out there. It gives us a lot of drive.
Mm,
Mm. For me, sometimes signs aren't meant to be captured in photos. It's just meant for our own eyes,
Yeah.
um, and there may be a more sacred reason for that. I mean, like for example, with crows, crows typically don't like to be photographed.
mm,
That's right.
They're not going to stand, just at attention for a photo.
Yeah.
But but it happened in this
Up
particular
close and personal.
up close and personal, this particular is take the picture, take the picture, take the picture. Um, and but sometimes signs are meant for our own eyes, and they're not meant to be used to convince somebody else of the validity of our experiences. If we know it's real for us, we can move forward with that, and then just do some very inspirational work framed around that belief system of the fact that we live in a multidimensional universe.
mm.
That's right.
Where do you think you would be in your grief if you hadn't embraced these awe and wonder type of things?
Robin, I sure as heck wouldn't be talking to you and Val right now.
Yeah.
Um, I think I would probably have have been stuck um, at a particular point.
Mm,
Um, in early grief, I had the resources that I needed to get through to the 7 year point. But after the 7 year point, my soul needed more, and that's when, through pure serendipity, Patty manifested, and then the spiritual transformation was in full force and is ongoing.
mm,
Had it not been through a serendipitous meeting that I'm sure there was divine intervention, I know it was divine intervention that we got together, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you.
mm,
I would not have progressed, and it would have been 22 years, and I still probably would have been acting behaviorally as if it was probably early grief or maybe early middle grief. I
mm,
wouldn't be where I am now. I sure as heck wouldn't have a podcast. I sure as heck wouldn't be embracing different perspectives or having a variety of spiritual teachers, in my circle.
mm.
Quite frankly, wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah. I feel the same way. It's really changed that moment with the dragonfly, that beginning moment, right? It took me down a different path, and I'm so glad it did. And I was open to it at that moment. And And like I said, sometimes I'm chasing my awe and wonder to keep me going, to keep
Yep.
me feeling alive and connected. And there's so much more to this world than I can understand. And each time I have these little things, it just is um, it's just so beautiful and powerful. And I'm glad that we are talking about it because there are people that don't see the awe and wonder in the world, and they are at some spot. And if like I'm like, maybe they'll see this, and maybe they'll hear another person talking about it. Maybe they'll help move them along some path that might be different than what they were on.
Or, the other thing, they won't talk about it because they're afraid they won't be believed. And that, or the person will think, well, you're a little crazy for feeling that way. But there's a lot of young adults that I've worked with that are highly intuitive, that work, deal in a multidimensionally, see the world multidimensionally. I teach artists at the Pratt Munson School of Art. And artists are very kinesthetic, they're very hands-on, they're very multisensory, they're very intuitive.
Mm.
Um, and they can attend to different things at once. And but a lot of times our young adults may be afraid of owning how they see the world because it doesn't fit with the rational view that everybody believes we should have, that. And essentially we all look at the world differently, and it's up to us to witness it, to honor it, and to learn from it.
And just to be clear, awe and wonder doesn't have to be in a spiritual context
Yeah,
whatsoever.
Mhm.
And it's what's known as stepping out, deactivating what neuroscience calls the default mode network of the brain. And that's kind of your basic set for, okay, this is how I usually think, this is how I talk, this is what's going to happen next, these are the thoughts on my head. And an all moment has a way of shifting us
yeah,
immediately into being much more mindful, much more present, and open. And
Mhm.
the trait of openness is an enormous part of being able to have awe moments.
mm,
So awe and wonder help us become more open. Now, whether you want to turn it into talking about connecting with a loved one or a spiritual experience, it doesn't have to go there whatsoever. Our awe and wonder can give us a richer sense of life, and we can still get on a spiritual level without having to, use it in any context at all.
yeah,
It can just be, wow, that was wonderful. It felt good. Um, it still has a lot of the same effects. It can give us more gratitude, makes us more reverent, and makes us more humble,
yeah.
and makes us feel like we're just a part of something so much bigger, which for many people are the foundations of a spiritual way of viewing things. So many people who are grieving, especially a loved one, are going to really appreciate awe and wonder in that context to feeling connected. But also, as Robyn has so beautifully described too, you're open to lots of different kinds of awe and wonder, and it comes in different ways, and it keeps feeding you
Mhm.
um, that bigger sense of being part of something bigger, and you know, so you're open to all different types, and so were you, Dave.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I think to add dovetail off of what you said too. I mean, you can cultivate spiritual awareness without believing in an afterlife.
right,
You can be an atheist and cultivate spiritual
that's
awareness.
right.
Um, there was one student that I was doing a presentation. I asked the group in general, how many of you don't believe in an afterlife? And guy raised his hand. And I said, I said, I told him right off the bat, I respect that. I said, but I guarantee that, I said, do you like to hang out in nature? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, I like sitting in the woods. He's guaranteed I can give you a framework based on Native American teachings of animals and nature and the teachings of nature, then you can basically just make connections just by what you see out in nature and cultivate awareness and be connected to something greater than yourself without believing in an afterlife.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's spirituality is very much an individualized process. It's what works for the individual. And there's a variety of different holistic and spiritual practices that we can choose from.
Mhm.
So as long as it works,
Well,
it's
it's
all,
that quality of being able to be open.
yeah,
And openness helps you heal from not, let's say, live with loss and live with grief, because you may not find closure. So you
Mhm.
learn to live more with openness,
yeah.
with the things that don't always have explanations.
Yeah, and I was just thinking too, like there's so many things um that I experienced that has nothing to do with Nick and that type of stuff in my like we were talking earlier the other day about some potential discussion point, and it was like about what was going on in the world, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I don't know, a couple weeks ago when it was just like there was just so much bad news on the TV and things like that. And I was like, I have to shut off. I have to get off of social media. I have to shut this off. I just have to go outside. And I went outside and, it's beautiful here because there's not a lot of light pollution. So you see all the stars and they're so beautiful. You feel like, wow, what the heck? Like who am I, this little person with this beautiful thing? And all of a sudden, I think it's called Starlink or something, came across the sky.
Oh,
I was just like, what? I had forgot all about the problem of the world, like like the nation is fighting with each other and, the nukes could have. Like, I was just like in that moment following it. I like walked around my house so I could watch it go away. And you just lose yourself in that moment. That had nothing to do with me thinking about Nick or anything else, but it was just this moment that took me out of myself, which is
yes,
very needed, you know?
yes, yes.
Again, with the guidance of Patty, I developed a activity where I burned some incense, meditated for a bit, and at 5:30 I started doing a random playlist of songs that I had asked Jeannine previously to help me pick. And one of the first concerts that we had gone to was the Goo Goo Dolls and the Gin Blossoms concert out in the New York State Fair. And the Goo Goo Dolls were opening up for the Gin Blossoms then. First two songs that came on shuffle, and I just asked her previously. I said, "Look, I just be with me for the day. Um, that's all. Just be with me. Just show me you're around." First two songs I heard on, and I had this on shuffle on my iPad. Then I had my iPad. Um, First two songs that came on were Gin Blossoms and a Goo Goo Doll song. So, and immediately I felt a sense of peace.
Hmm.
And this is the other thing about connection is that we don't have to wait for our loved ones to connect with us. We can connect with them. With them, they will reciprocate. We don't have to wait for them to reach out. We can reach out anytime. And if we feel a sense of peace doing that, perhaps that individual, depending on what's going on in the moment, could interpret that, yeah, my loved one is present because of that feeling of peace. And I felt that feeling of peace when I did that activity and just, asked her to be present.
Hmm.
So, and again, I know how I felt, and it's important that we not try to consensually validate the experience, but again, ask questions to find out what that experience did for that individual and how it helped them get through that moment of grief and how they can use that experience to help them move forward in grief. That's our job as
Yeah,
expert companions, as coaches, as clinicians, as bereavement volunteer bereavement support workers. Our job is to witness and see, understand what that experience meant to them, not to say whether that experience was valid or not.
right,
Hmm.
right. Amen to that.
And
Because it's a search for meaning. It's
mhm,
just so meaningful. And like I say, it can drive us to do things
yep,
that we might have been afraid to do or didn't believe for whatever reason.
yep,
And that's a big part of healing.
hmm,
So you're so right though, Dave. You provide that place and space for people in
hmm,
your work. And it's
yep.
so valuable. And so does Robyn.
Well, after the the death of my daughter, transition of my daughter, paraphrasing another writer by the name of Tom Crider, he was like, after his daughter died, he was trying to rummage through a box of clothes, trying to find a sweater that was going to fit. And I was doing the same thing. I was trying to figure out what's going to fit. The clothes I have now don't fit the same way that the clothes I had prior to grief. Well, partially because I've lost a lot of weight by choice, but the other part is that I tell individuals if we try to move through grief with the same foundation that we had prior to loss, we're not going to make it. Our foundation has to be comprised of different perspectives, different tools that reflect our new reality, and that are going to help us accept the fact that we're living in a world without the physical presence of our loved ones, but yet we're willing to re-engage in life with meaning. And also be open to embracing the awe and wonder that the universe has to offer, whether it's through our deceased loved ones or through our deceased ancestors in general. I've come to believe that it's not only Jeannine that manifests, but she's part of that universal oneness of all of the people that I've loved that have transitioned or passed on. I believe she's all part of that. And I
Mhm.
believe that when she comes, the rest of my ancestors are there in form as well too. So now I have a community of souls
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
inspire me.
Yeah, you're some part of something just so big, right?
Oh yeah, and I think if we lose that sense of awe and we lose that sense of meaning and that sense of connectedness, that that's a big part of our continuing to stay engaged in life, continuing to stay relevant. If we lose meaning,
Mm.
it's a slow death,
Mhm.
Yeah.
spiritually and then eventually physically.
It's amazing when, in light of what's going on around the world and all the noise and all the screens,
Mm.
you know, getting off and being present to something bigger through just looking at something beautiful or just stopping. So, anyway, I wish everybody will have moments like that. Dave, thank you so much for coming and telling these stories and bringing your perspective. And thank you so much for the work you do. Um, and hope we get to hear more about you and all kinds of ways we can collaborate in the
Yep.
future. So, anyway, thank you all for coming this evening. It's
Well,
been a
thank,
good talk, as
well,
usual.
thank you, Val, Robin, for having me again.
Yeah, it's been great to talk again. So we'll see you guys all next time. Thank you.
Got it.